talking to Colin Desmond O'Halloran, better known to the people of Ballyfermot as Collie, who for many years had his van on Kylemore Road selling sweets and all sorts of bits and pieces, well remembered as a legend at Ballyfermot. Sorry about the last time, Collie, as I said, it was full there, but you were just saying your earliest memories.
My earliest, I'll try and cut it down a bit.
All right.
My earliest memories is of a van in Cabra where I lived with my grandmother, and there was a shop called Mortis, and my ma had a few little bits and scraps after we got the house in Ballyfermot, 275 Kylemore Road. So my earliest memories is going pushed into the corner of that old van with a few bits and scraps my ma had, and going to this new house on Kylemore Road. And in that house there was great neighbours. I'm changing the docket a bit there now to what we were talking about.
You're all right.
But there was great neighbours. There was Mrs. Hall one side, and there was Mrs. Higgins, a Limerick woman, and a lovely man, Mr. Higgins. And beside her was Taff's.
Tommy
Taff. Father Thomas Taff. Tommy Taff. His father was a bus conductor, and then he became an inspector. But he was real officious, you know. But Mrs. Taff, lovely little stout woman, lovely person, and she used to get a bit of credit in a shop in Leonard's Corner. And one day she asked me, a Friday, would I go for to get her messages, pay whatever off the bill and get the rest. And so Collie took a chance.
Now you would have been only about 9 or 10 at this time, isn't that right, Collie? Yeah, that's all you would have been.
10 to 12.
10 to 12, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what I done was I got the 79 down to Kilmainham, found my way up to Ballyfermot Road, got the 20 bus on Ballyfermot Road, and it brought me right down to Leonard's Corner. I went in then, paid a few bob to Mr. O'Malley. It's all coming back to me now, God. Paid a few bob to Mr. O'Malley, and then gave him the list for the new lot of messages. And I'd get the messages then, and you didn't get butter. You got the yellow butter, that was country butter. Jesus, we'd nothing to eat, but we were fussy little bastards, as my mother said. But Mrs. Taff, she always got a couple of pound of Cleves butter. And of course, that was an incentive for me to go for the messages for Mrs. Taff. I'd bring back, and Mrs. Taff always gave me mother a bit of butter, you know, and then she'd get the messages. And I had done this. I used to, it was a Friday. You know, after school, Friday I'd get ready and go in and do the messages. And then I got the messages for ages and ages for Mrs. Taff, because it was a two-way system. Once I went and got the messages, my ma got a bit of butter, or she would never be short. As I say, the other side of us then was Mrs. Hall, and next to her was a lady called Mrs. Allen. She was the first woman we ever saw wearing slacks. Mrs. Allen. Just they were a few years there. Then next to Mrs. Allen was a family come in called Burks. Paddy Burke, a madman. He big. I think Paddy Burke was Kennyman, and used to have us out on the road playing hurling when you could be on the road in Kylemore. And just to add a little bit of fun to it, across the road from him lived another family, lads we played with, the Ryans. And Mr. Ryan was another barman, and he was from Tipperary. And the banter between him and Ryan and Burke, I'm telling you, yeah, they'd be out there and they'd be swinging down. We'd have bits of wood for hurdles, but they were hurling people. Do you know what I mean? That was and them being barmen. Now they're the memories of. As a matter of fact, just to go further, next to Burke's was the Heasleys. The father was a sign writer. But most important, next to the Heasleys was Florrie Comerford, a character. And Paddy Comerford was one of the best snooker players in the city of Dublin. He ended up becoming a referee in the snooker business, nice man. He worked, I think he worked in CIE or in the works or somewhere like that. But snooker, brilliant. His sister in turn was Lily Comerford, who had the Irish dancing school. But that's just to give you, they were the people we met and we come in contact when we went to live on Kylemore Road in 1949.
And then you mentioned that you came from numerous places just before that, Tram Cottages and the Quarry Road, where you lived for 10 years before you came there to Ballyfermot. Now, was there any other houses from Kylemore Road built up, if you know the scheme, from say Ballyfermot Crescent?
Yeah. Well, if you start through the lanes.
Yeah.
When you start through the lanes, you're on Thomond. You come up the lane and you're on to Kylemore. You go through the lane on Kylemore and you're into the Crescent. You crossed the road at that, went up a house, and then you went up another long lane, and that left you to
Glass Road.
No, that left you to Ballyfermot Avenue. So you went to the avenue. Now, that was when the lanes kind of half stopped. When you went through the gates then, the little bit of lane, say the length of the back gardens on the avenue, that's when you come in to what wasn't then known as the Glass Road. Right?
And that was also a Sawmills Road at one time earlier, wasn't it?
No, before it was like we went through and the builders had their sawmill at this area where we were sitting. And we used to go through there to rob the bits of the offcuts of the wood. Because you see, gas bills are very hard to pay. And so, the gas bill particularly. So we could pinch the owl offcuts and all the rest and get a sack of them home. And see, when we had fires in the houses, you had your little fire, and you had these two little bits that swung around over the flame. So you were able to boil the old kettle or put a little pan on if you had a rasher to fry. So, now just to continue with the lanes. The field, it was a field then, it wasn't a glass road, it was a field. And you'd walk across the field, you went through another bit of lane, and then you were in, I'm giving you one on the lanes now. When you went across the field, you went through a little bit, and then you were on Ballyfermot Parade. You went through the parade, across the road, and you come out on Ballyfermot Drive.
And that was my road.
When you come down the drive, you cut out then onto Lefania. To the country shop, as we used to call it. What's O'Riordan's, was it?
O'Riordan's, that's right.
God, Collie, you didn't lose it. Yeah, O'Riordan's.
Yeah.
Young Carmel Fennel worked in that for a while too.
Yeah.
So, that's the opening gambit for me from 1949 when we went to live. And I suppose it's not surprising that I ended up uh, doing what I done for all the years, you know. But I worked on the milk cars in the morning, and then it's here in this little bit here. I went to work with bread men, cheap men selling cheap bread. Landys used to have a fella come around. But one of the first fellas I went where I'd get a few bob was a chap called Matt Caffrey. And Matt Caffrey had a blue Volkswagen van. They were only out then, the Volkswagens. You hear the adverts for Volkswagens now and or Mercedes up on the night, one of them blue vans. And I used to work if you call it, I was helped anyway. But Matt was a very good looking fella, and he used to, his sisters were all worked in the ice cream parlours, and Matt and his brother used to be doormen in the dance halls, the Olympic and all that. So, but he done vegetables during the day. He lived in Dolphins Road, and Matt used to come, and I used to meet him at the top of Kylemore, and that's where he kind of started the route. And with Matt Caffrey, he done vegetables, but coming from the Cork Street area, he had a mark, as we called it, a connection with Donnelly's, right? And Matt, just going through the 50s, Matt would get a big sack of ribs, not like the skibbery old ribs you get in the shops today, big sack of ribs. And then he'd have another sack with pig's feet. But then he had a big bat, you know the old steel bats.
Oh yeah.
And in the bat to be livers and a good sharp knife. And we used to cut the livers in the van and all. And that was before all the health regulations that they brought in and the poison they give us now. We never made anybody sick, or we never poisoned anybody. And you got your twice a week if you got them, you know, at least we knew we were going to get a dinner. Now that's Matt Caffrey. Now Matt sold out. He robbed the poor bugger from Mayo, from Knock. But Matt got the money and Matt was gone. Matt's in Australia. But the next man I worked for is a different man. Now when I say about Matt had big, blonde, curly hair. And he used to wear a Crombie or a tie belt. Flash to the last. And I used to walk behind him, and he'd knock at the door and somebody wants something, and he'd say, kid, get this, get that. I remember we were delivering on Cole Park one day, and I was sitting in the van, and Matt was gone inside, always in to talk to the ladies, and Matt comes to the door, kid. I hops out, toddles up. Matt hands me a bag, 2 bottles of 4-shot whiskey, no labels, no nothing. The man at the house worked in Jemisin's. You know what to do with that kid? I goes out, lifts the long seat on the Volkswagen, puts the bottles in, closed down, business done. That was my training.
I see. That's where you got your entrepreneur skills for later on in life.
It's well possible. Now, as I say, that was Matt. Matt was a single man, and flashed to the last. The next man I went to work for was Tommy Kyle. Now, Tommy Kyle, you might remember if you're coming down from the drive. Kyle, Mrs. Kyle lived in Kylemore Avenue. Next, Mrs. Q show beside her. And with Tommy Kyle, I was out in the vans, and naturally enough, a married man, young children, I wasn't very old. I'd have been kind of an older one to them, more or less, and I minded their kids years after. It's another long old story to tell. But in Tommy Kyle's case, he was a great man for the fish, and he used to do a bit of wholesale fish as well, a little bit of wholesale. So kind of, that's where my brother learned to fillet. JJ, he was a brilliant filler altogether, because Tommy Kyle worked in the market, and he got the best of filleters to come up to do the fish. But one of the things, I mentioned it in that little story I had there, which is worth reading through, and you'll find other things, the same but differently. But with Tommy Kyle, I'd go up to the house, he'd go down, Tommy Kyle used to go down to Wicklow on Monday, and he'd be down on Monday night, and he'd come back with the van full of rabbits. They'd be panched and all, and then the rabbits would be skinned. And on the Tuesday morning, when we'd be going to school, like, you know, be supposed to be going to school, like, you know, I would drive straight up to Kyle's.
What school would that have been, just as a matter of interest?
Special buses.
Yeah.
City Key.
Yeah. And that's City Key you went to?
City Key School, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, just wanted to...
I went to St. Peter's first before we left Cabra. But yeah, Tommy, I get had the basket, and the rabbits would be in it, and the customers we had, like on Kylemore, certain customers, one of them being me mother, and you went down to the house, knocked 2 rabbits. I know it was 2 rabbits for $1. 2 and 6, and that wasn't shaped then for rabbit, but you got good stuff. It wasn't, you know, the good wild Wicklow rabbits. I wish I could get one now. And as I say, we delivered the rabbits, and then I'd go back home to the house to get ready for school, to get the bus. Myself and JJ, and my ma be pushing us out to school, and we'd go out the gate, and we'd be slinging down. That's the word I use. It's in there. We'd slinge down Kylemore Road, and as easy as we could, so as that just when we'd get near the end, the bus used to stop, and the bus would be turning and going down. So we were ahead of the posse. So I'd come back, miss the bus, ma, straight up to Tommy Kyle, onto the vegetable van, and go round the houses then with the half a stone of spuds and 6pence worth of pot herbs for to win with the 2 rabbits. The taste of it. Yeah. Me ma, she got the same. You know, so that was that was the way, you know. And my brother, he, after being delivered in the milk, he got a job with TEK. There was TEK were Ted L. Keeber, Charlemont Street. They were over there at the big beside the big pub, and I used to have it. The fella, when I was getting milk from Dublin Dairies, then we changed to no, this was much further on, but my brother JJ, he got a job in TEK, delivered in the milk. I was to get the job, and I didn't want it. I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to do my own thing. So.
And then, Collie, as a kid, what kind of the gala wouldn't have been opened, and as you said, they were only building the schools and the church. What did you do? What did you play? How did you spend your leisure time?
The gala might have been open, but we went to the pictures down in Chapel Lizard.
The Oriel.
Yeah. In beside the cop's shop there. Yeah. In beside the cop shop. We went to the pictures in the Oriel.
Yeah.
And the pubs then, course, you'd always get a couple of bottles in Grace's.
And would you have been the age then to get a couple of bottles? Would you?
No, well, I knew. Oh no, I never really, I didn't really drink. We weren't young drinkers or anything like that. To give you an idea, now I was 24 when I was getting married. And myself, Liam O'Neill, Irene, Esther, we went, night before I was getting married, I had a little van apart from the van I was selling out of. And we went to the pub, the Black Horses are on the bridge.
That's right, yeah.
Went in, and of course I was getting married, a great fella, like, you know. And I went in. Liam O'Neill, he used to be a fitter, and he would have been kind of known in the pub because when the workmen finished on a Friday, and he was an apprentice, so he'd go with them. So we goes in, big fella, like, where you at? Liam was having a pint of Smithwick's, and my girlfriend at the time, intended wife, come the next day, and they said they'd have a snowball. Very petite ladies, so they had the snowball, and Collie said he'd have a glass of orange. I went up to the counter, and your mum wouldn't serve me. He thought I was too young. I hadn't got the beer then, but anyway. And I went back, said to Liam, no problem, because the barman recognised him from going in with the working men. But there was a bit of strictness there all the same.
Yeah.
I wouldn't complain about that now, to be honest with you, when you see today. But different world.
I know what you mean.
Different world, different times.
So you would have seen then the likes of Lafarnia being built, Ballyfermot Drive, on up, all the house being built then as well. It must have been like a rubble yard, was it?
Do you remember little Robbie King? No?
No.
Little Robbie. He's an old-sized man. He lived near the lane, and he loved to sing. Yeah, and he's a good little singer too, like, you know. But when he had been in the choir, and when Father Boland disbanded the choir, that's where I took I thought priests didn't tell lies, but they can. Father Boland said we'll be suspending the gents and boys choir for a few months, but the girls choir was kept on, and the boys choir, men's choir, never come back. But there was a man used to singing it, a Mr. Victory. Mr. Victory lived on the drive. He had the first Down syndrome. He had a Down syndrome girl, and we wouldn't know what that meant, except that she was a bit different. We used to go to his house for a few weeks. He was trying to keep a connection going, and we do a little bit of singing. And this girl, this girl used to be there, like, you know. And a nice man, Mulholland's beside him. Mulholland's, Mrs. Mulholland, lovely little person. Yeah, I deliver to them too, like, you know, when you're. So Ballyfermot's a great place.
And then you moved out, and why had you to move out of Ballyfermot? Or where did you go to then?
Well, I'll just give you, because you'll be able to check up on your little machine. Well, what happened was, as I say, we lived in Kylemore. Now, my dad got it into his head that we get a transfer from 275 across the road to 254. People who lived in it was Mrs. Brown, and she was moving to somewhere else, and of course my outfit had always the head working. So he said he gave the corpo an excuse. He wanted to transfer, wanted the side entrance, having the boys and all boys going, no problem, moved across. Somebody else, as Mrs. Murphy went into 275, owl face we used to call her. Jesus, she only looked like she was 100, just the way people, you know. And we moved across to 254, grand, everything going fine. And then Collie decided, he's going to get an old van. And there was a chap on the Crescent, had an old, must have had the same thing in his mind that I had, and he had an old black van, and he wanted 25 quid for it. It didn't drive, it had a big side that you could lift up, and I hadn't got the money, but I borrowed a fiver here, and a fiver there, and a fiver somewhere, and I got the 25 quid. And we went around, myself, Pat Roach, JJ, and we got this van and we pushed it around to Kylemore. Now, Kylemore at that time, you know, was practically grass out to the road, and we got it up outside the door anyway. Oh God. Outside the door. And I got a few bob. I went down to Thomas Street. There was a wholesaler's there, Monty's. And I got a box of sweets and a gross of matches. What I think, I didn't know nothing. Got a box of sweets, a gross of matches, and a few other things. And had the old van outside the door. Naturally, you'd bring their stuff in at night. So the reason is we were evicted a few years after because we were selling from the house. Well, we weren't selling from the house, selling for the van, but that's another day's work. So we eventually, we were in court a couple of times, and that was okay when my father went, because my father was very knowledgeable when it come to the courts, you know. So I got a van that drove, and I went on the side of the road. I got summons for no street trader's license, certificate, you name it. And at this stage, I say that this was a van that drove, so we got it into our head to knock the wall for to put it inside. And that put the cat amongst the pigeons. But me outfit was a trier all the way. So after a couple of times in court, my father would always get it put back or adjourned, or, you know. And this time, he was a one-day millionaire, because when he got the health insurance on the Thursday, he went on the piss.
Yeah.
And his health wasn't the best anyway. And I was always afraid that he'd go under a bus sometime, you know. And he went, well, the court was on this court was on a Friday, and of course he was after being on the lash on the Thursday. And all me needed was $50 to get into town, and that's when he met everybody. Mm. So my ma went, and of course my ma didn't understand, you know, just, and with the result, that's when the corpo got the eviction order. And this time they weren't taking no pigeons. You were going. So on the date, I don't know whether I have it at home, the lorry come up. It was like Good Friday, and it was on a Friday we were evicted. And the lorry come up, and they'd all the tins, and there's an old corpo lorry. Do you remember when they gave up the horses, and a fella'd get an old lorry, you know? And I remember it well. They took the tins off, and of course my outfit then, okay, do you come? Yeah. Would you move whatever you had? Oh no, says my father. No, the few little things my ma had. My brother was working as a mechanic, and he used to be driving different vans for the man he worked for. And few things my ma put were next door neighbours, and then there was X amount left. Oh no, says my father. Yous are here for an eviction. So now you have to put us outside the door. And then you go in. And then you empty the house. So he made them go in, made them take up all the bits of old bits of linoleum we had, and enough stuff to throw out the window into the front garden. And then to put up the tins. That's when we were evicted. That was, and I got another old van and I went back on the road. That was 1960 coming to 61, and I went back on the road, and I was on the road then until December 1999 when I had a crash on the way home. And that put a stop to me gallop.
And when you were evicted, where did you move to then?
When we were evicted, I'll tell you exactly now. We were evicted and I slept in a couple of different houses for the week on Kylemore. My ma and the younger lads went down to my aunt in the North Strand, to the house that I live in now. That I actually owned it now, but anyway. But that's where my mother went. Now, my father went to the Ivy. Because my father, as I say, one day millionaire, a gargler, and my mother's sister, who lived in the North Strand, she wouldn't tolerate drink, so he was barred.
Yeah.
So he was up and out to the corpo for to be rehoused, and after a week they offered him an old flat in Sean McDermott Street before they were knocking it, getting it ready to knock. And it used to be a place for the brassers and and of course my uncle was in, as he stayed in the Ivy, and he kept after them, and I'd say must have been, I'd be open to check, I'd have to be checked, but it was about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and they decided that they'd give the family a house, a flat in 174 St. Bridget's Gardens, North Wall. And that's where my father died in 1966. And as my mother said, like, you know, she'd settle anywhere anyway, but she found more new lovely neighbours down there. And after my father died, she was there, and then one of my brothers, was JJ actually, decided he'd get her a flat in somewhere in Sandymount, Vavazar Avenue or somewhere in Sandymount. And I didn't know about it, but he probably thought he was doing right. You know, my ma Harry was, another brother Harry and the two boys, they were in Bridget's, happy enough young fellas. They were going to school in, well, not Harry, but the other two. They were going to school in, Seville Place. And of course JJ thinks he's doing right, and nobody knew. My ma went to this Sandymount, and of course the two youngsters went and were there for a while, and they had to go across then to Seville Place, could have been in school. But couple of years after, the youngest fella, Brian, he gets stuck into me over moving me ma to Sandymount. I said, what? I knew nothing about that. And like, I was living on the grace of God in my aunt's. You know, I hadn't got nowhere myself, but I was living with my aunt, and I was married at this stage. So, but when I think of Brian, the little so-and-so, got stuck into me big time. As a matter of fact, I'll have to take it up with him again and get him really straight on, like, you know. But, like, you know, JJ thought he was doing right.
Yeah. But one thing that comes out of it, listening to you there, Collie, you never forgot the people of Ballyfermot. You never forgot Ballyfermot, bringing back your van in 1961 to 1999.
Every day.
Every day. From North Strand.
From North Strand. I only missed one Christmas day.
Oh, you actually worked on the Christmas day as well?
Yeah, I missed the Christmas day of the Christmas 1999. That would have been Christmas 1999. I missed that one because I had to crash. The van was right road off near enough. Yeah, but it couldn't go.
Yeah.
And the one before that was a few years before, and I was up on the road, and I got the missus wasn't feeling too well, and I had only done half the morning, so I had to pack up and go home.
Yeah. And that's the first thing you used to hear people, that's what you said to me, the first thing you used to hear people as you drove up your van on Kylemore Road, here comes
Collie. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I gave a bit of credit. I did. I gave a good bit of credit. And everybody thinks when, well, this foregone conclusion, but it just didn't happen, because there's nobody used that as an excuse not to pay me.
Yeah, yeah. Did you give by tick as well?
All the time.
All the time, tick. Yeah.
All the time. I robbed Peter to pay Paul. Once I got a good connection in the cash and carry, and I always made sure I paid me way, and I could get whatever I wanted off them. And I gave credit on Kylemore Road, on Blackditch. Anybody wanted.
And people made sure to come back to you and pay you.
People always paid me.
Brilliant.
People always paid me.
Yeah.
You know, and I have to say that without hesitation. I'm sure people have a pain in their arse when I get talking about Ballier, and you know, because they all think because you gave a bit of credit that you got stuck. You wouldn't. And if I had wanted, I never bought anything. You know, I got offered loads and loads of stuff. My own brother could have kept me supplied. Never mind strangers. But I didn't deal that way. I didn't want any of that. Because the one thing I have, I suppose, that when you read the fear and love of God, well, I always figure that if I started to take chancy stuff and try to get money that way, well, I had young children. I said, you know, I always had real afraid that any of them would get sick, and I'd have blamed it on that.
Yeah.
So it's just it's just I could have got van loads of stuff.
Yeah.
Because I knew all the chancy fellas, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think what you've told me here is a great insight into Ballyfermot from the very start. I think we'll end the recording there at the moment, because I think what you've told me now, people will really love to hear what you have said. I showed you a thing earlier where 2,000 people viewed your photograph just before Christmas, and your memories. So that's the type of memories that are from Ballyfermot.